I've mentioned this before, but there are many, many images of God throughout the Bible. There's God as King. There's God as Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. There's God as friend, as brother, as lover. There's God as dove, as fire, and so on. Today, the image that we are given is Good Shepherd. And it doesn't matter which year it is. We're in year B, lectionary year B. There's 3 of them, A, B, and C. Any year, this Sunday, 3 Sundays after Easter, it's Good Shepherd Sunday. Every passage is about the Good Shepherd. Makes me think we ought to dwell on this image a little bit today. We ought to play with it, develop it. And it's a little bit removed from us, I know that. I drive around Southern California. I don't see too many shepherds with their sheep. I've seen a couple in Northern California from time to time, but it's not something I come in contact with every day. And I'm sure for maybe most of you, maybe even all of you, it's not an image we're that familiar with. We might see some cattle. Have you seen cows? But sheep aren't the same as cattle. So, how about this one? Have you ever heard anyone say that sheep are dumb animals? Maybe another preacher in another sermon. Actually, I'm going to defend the sheep a little bit, and then we'll get back to this idea of the Good Shepherd. But, they say things like sheep are no good except for slaughtering and shearing. That's it, right? They're dumb. Well, how does that make you feel? I mean, if Jesus is supposed to be our Good Shepherd, then that makes us sheep. And when someone stands before me and proclaims that sheep are stupid and witless beasts, well, I'm not feeling like I want to be a part of that flock. Are you? Maybe I should go somewhere else. But 3 sources I read this week as I prepared for the sermon. 3, not just 1, but 3 say otherwise. They say sheep are not dumb. In fact, they say, all 3 of them, that this rumor was started by cowboys. Cowboys, those guys who ride around on their horses and they throw ropes around and they hoop and holler. And they go behind the cattle to drive them forward where they want them to go. Well, if they try to go behind sheep and drive them forward and push them, they don't want to go forward at all. Instead, the sheep run around and try to get behind the cowboys, trying to drive them. That's right. Sheep don't want to be pushed. Instead, they want to be led. And cowboys call them dumb and witless because sheep don't behave like cows. And that makes me feel a little better. That makes me feel more like, here's something I want to be a part of. A community that is not pushed and prodded to get us to go where the shepherd wants us to go. A good shepherd doesn't manipulate. But we are instead led by the good shepherd himself, Jesus, who shows us by example that we are to put others first. And in extreme cases, even to lay down our lives for the sake of others. And that piece about the sheep knowing their shepherd, that's not just some comfortable platitude either. Some more stories I read this week. There was one about a shepherd who would walk in and among his sheepfold at night when the sheep are asleep, tucked in, cozy and warm, and not a sheep would stir, no matter what the shepherd did, walking in and among them. But if anyone else, even another shepherd, but certainly we can think of cowboys here, or even maybe a stealthy spy, tries to walk in and among those sheep, one by one they wake up and they start to bleat nervously. They're not dumb animals. They know the difference between their shepherd and a cowboy. Another story in Palestine, to this day, I read about sheep. They know their shepherd's voice. Well, shepherds will lead many flocks, many shepherds with their flocks, will lead them to a watering hole about the same time of the day, and they just let their sheep go to the watering hole with all the other sheep. And they mix up and they commingle, and you can't tell one sheep from another to which flock they belong. There's no branding or anything like that. But all the shepherd has to do is whistle or call, and out of that mass, that convoluted mass, the shepherd's sheep will come to him or her one by one. And they're organized, and there's not an extra sheep there, and there's not one missing. They know their shepherd's voice. One flock, one shepherd. They also know smell, footfalls, manner, his rod and staff, and even his lumbering gait comfort them. So sheep aren't dumb, which makes me feel better. Hope makes you feel better too. They just don't want to be pushed around. And unlike cows, they know their shepherd. Nonetheless, sheep are temperamental. They can get grumpy with one another. They're needy, they're smelly, and it seems like for apparently no reason at all, they'll butt heads. Which is to say they need shepherding. Now at this point, the shepherd has some options. I'm not saying good shepherd here, just shepherds have options. The flock has been together for many years, generations in fact. There's baby sheep and parent sheep and grandparent sheep all together, living in community, trying to live comfortably and in harmony with each other. But you know how it is. The heat of the summer comes. The water hole begins to dry up. The green pastures aren't so green anymore. They start to look brown. And dust coats your throat. Well, some of the sheep in your community, the alphas, they get grumpy and they begin to argue with each other. But what does a shepherd do? One option is to drive the biggest alpha out, away from the shepherd, or away from the flock. Now notice I said drive, because if you try to lead the alpha out, the others are going to follow. You got to get rid of one though. To preserve the flock, that individual rogue alpha must be driven out. And what happens to that alpha out in the wilderness? The shepherd doesn't really care too much because it preserves the flock, the rest of the flock. Now I call this method of shepherding, I've been picking on cowboys, so I call this one the independent cowboy. Now there are other options. The second option is to divide the flock up, maybe into two. One alpha is unhappy with another. The one alpha believes that he was predestined to be a part of this flock. And he goes around convincing many other sheep of his opinion. Whereas another alpha believes that it is her choice, it's her free will to be a part of this flock, and has likewise convinced several others of her opinion. The shepherd sees this, he understands the headbutting, and decides the best way to keep the peace is to divide up the flock, call another shepherd, you take that one, I'll take this one. According to doctrinal differences, I like to call this one the judging Protestant shepherd. And of course, there's another shepherd out there that believes in tough love. His rod and his staff, they comfort his sheep, he believes, by giving them what they deserve, by keeping them in a state of submission so that they don't run off to the wolves. He knows what his sheep need much more than they do after all. This is discipline, and I call this the medieval Catholic shepherd. But Jesus is different than all of these, right? Jesus is the good shepherd, and he has lots and lots of sheep about whom we know nothing about. Independent, non-denominational sheep. Opinionated, fundamentalist, conservative sheep. Evangelical sheep. Liberal, mainline sheep. Republican sheep. Democrat sheep. Unaffiliated sheep. Dogmatic, Sarum-right, Catholic sheep. Unchurched sheep. Muslim sheep. Atheist sheep. You see where I'm going? I mean, you talk about potential for headbutting here, yet all these sheep are a part of one flock, or they will be. Jesus says there will be one flock, one shepherd, and many of these sheep we know nothing about. Jesus is their good shepherd just as much as he is ours. Whether they know it or not, whether we know it or not. There will be one flock, one shepherd. Do you believe this? Now, many of you know that part of my journey, my spiritual journey, started in high school with some parachurch Bible studies, and it went from there to some non-denominational and then Baptist churches, and then Presbyterian and Reformed, until finally, this was like a 20-year journey, I ended up as an Episcopalian. And by God's grace, Holly took this journey with me. Lots of dominoes had to fall to get me here. I believed for a long time that, yes, there was one flock, but this one flock was small and exclusive. One day, at long last, there I was with my family, worshiping in a small congregation. It's the only service on Sunday, and there were maybe 25 other people with us. It was a small, reformed congregation. Truth had long been debated, hard fought through the ages, but we chosen ones had a handle on the truth better than anybody else. We just knew it. We were enlightened. We understood. Too bad, so sad for you and everybody else. But like Episcopalians, this little congregation every week would stand up and confess the Nicene Creed together. And so coming to that line one Sunday, it clicked. This line that says, we believe in one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. I looked around and I almost laughed out loud. No, we don't, I said to myself. Just look at us. We don't believe in a universal church. We're a tiny sect that has splintered off from another, maybe a little bit larger sect, but still tiny. We don't believe in a universal church. We believe in our church. One holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, my foot, right? That's what I wanted to say. But what clicked was this. Christ calls us to be unified, not divided. To community, not isolation. It's a message we hear. It's throughout the Bible. There's nothing profound in this today. I'm not telling you anything you've never heard before. But think about this. Unity in the wider church around the world, what's been our tendency, especially since the Protestant Reformation, but throughout Christian history? It's to say, oh, we don't agree, let's break off and start something new. There's been splintering and fracturing and dividing much more than unifying. There will be one flock, Jesus says, one shepherd. It leaves me wondering how. Well, the good news today is that this is a difficult question, but like so many other difficult answers to questions, I don't have an answer, but I know where it begins. It begins here with us and what we're already doing. That's the good news. We already have community. We're already living in community with one another. We're already trying to get around our headbutting and our disharmony and get along and come and worship and commune at the same table together. When we butt heads, we don't drive each other from our midst. But we work through our differences, knowing that we'll be a stronger body for it. We study and pray together. We study some of the great paradoxes of the Bible with reason. Naturally, we're going to disagree with each other. We're going to interpret things differently. But at the end of the day, we set aside our doctrinal differences and we commune at Christ's table together. We don't coerce by force or by threat of judgment. We don't manipulate through fear and guilt. But rather, we practice the greatest commandment, which is love. And we do this in inviting and welcoming and including all. That's the good news. We're on our way. There will be one flock, one shepherd. We don't see it today. But if we keep following Jesus, who we know is our good shepherd, we can trust that one day it will all come together. One flock, one shepherd. The Lord is our shepherd, our good shepherd, and thus we shall not be in want. He guides us, his one flock, along right pathways. He leads us to still waters and green pastures, where together we eat and drink the body and blood of Christ. And when his one flock walks alone, any one of us, when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we're not really alone. He's there with us through the community. In those daily struggles of life, as the psalm says, he spreads his table before us. And surely his goodness and mercy, we know, will follow us, his one flock, all the days of our life. And we shall dwell in his sheepfold forever. Amen.